And breaking reports are just coming in. It's Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson who has said that over the past 24 hours, discussions have been held on main topics which include Strait of Hormuz, nuclear issue, war reparations, lifting sanctions, complete end of war against Iran. The spokesperson has also gone on to say that the success of diplomatic process depends on other sides' seriousness and good faith, while urging them to refrain from maximalist and unlawful demands and accept Iran's rights. The negotiations are set to resume later on Sunday. So the statement coming in from the Iranian side regarding the talks so far and what Iran essentially expects out of these talks that are taking place in Islamabad. In fact, also the statement, quoting the statement that's coming in from the Iranian Foreign Ministry, it says, diplomacy for us is a continuation of the sacred jihad of defenders of the Iranian land. We have not forgotten and will not forget the experiences of America's breaches of promise and malicious acts, just as we will not forget the heinous crimes committed by them during the course of the second and third imposed wars. Detailing the talks so far, today was a busy and long day for the delegation of Islamic Republic of Iran in Islamabad. The intensive negotiations that began from the morning of Saturday with Pakistan's benevolent effort and mediation have continued without interruption until now, and numerous messages and texts have been exchanged between the two sides. All right, let's go across to Susan, my colleague who's been tracking the latest. Susan, fast-paced developments, take us through all that has happened in the latest and specific statements coming in from the White House and President Trump himself.
Right. So the president said that he's watching these negotiations very carefully. Of course, he spoke to reporters and said that he believes that the United States has won regardless of the outcome of these negotiations, and he believes that the United States has the capability of opening the Strait of Hormuz. We'll have to wait and see, to what extent that can happen at this point, because it does seem that as we're waiting for the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance to gaggle for a press conference in Islamabad, the issue of the Strait of Hormuz seems to be a sticking point. An important point that the Iranian Foreign Ministry also said in that statement that you mentioned, over the past 24 hours, discussions have covered various dimensions of core issues under navigation, including the Strait of Hormuz, the nuclear file, war reparations, sanctions relief, and a complete end to the war against Iran in the region. Now, you have the issue of war reparations, sanctions relief, this complete end to the war and whatnot, which means extending this ceasefire. A lot of this has to do with Iran's domestic audience and perhaps forces in the IRGC who are not in favor of these talks with the U.S. side. So we have to take these with a grain of salt. It's hard to imagine that the United States would agree to a lot of the demands that the Iranian side has put forth. But after 15, 16 hours, it's hard to imagine that the Iranians, after this statement, have also, to an extent, agreed to what the United States wants from Iran. And part of that is to not have proxies attack U.S. and Israeli forces, like proxies like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. They want to somehow get the nuclear dust, as President Trump said earlier, or the enriched uranium in Iran out of Iran in one way or the other. And they also, of course, want the freedom of navigation in international waters, which is the Strait of Hormuz, the main sticking point. Those, at least before the negotiations, were no-goes. So there's a lot of daylight between the two sides, even as these negotiations are expected to progress. But I think we'll get a better understanding about what's happening and what happened behind closed doors. And Vance's tone is going to be very important, I think, once he comes in front of the cameras and gaggles in front of reporters.
Yes, Susan, while we are waiting for that press conference by J.D. Vance, reports also suggest that 2 U.S. warships have crossed the Strait of Hormuz. Any statements coming in from the U.S. side specific to these U.S. warships crossing the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes, we did. We got a good reading, actually, from CENTCOM that they said that this had happened. These navigations had happened, and this really came shortly after President Trump said that the United States was going in. The Central Command began setting conditions for clearing mines in the Strait of Hormuz on April 11th. This is according to CENTCOM. as two U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyers conducted operations. The USS Frank E. Peterson and USS Michael Murphy transited the Strait of Hormuz and operated in the Arabian Gulf as part of a broader mission to ensure the strait is fully clear of sea mines previously laid by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. So they said that this operation did indeed happen. Iranians were, to a certain extent, not completely contradicting this for a short while, but we haven't heard contradictions from the Iranian side for a few hours now. This is important because there was a New York Times report that said that Iran had put these mines in the Strait of Hormuz but could not find them at this point, even if it did have the intention to open the Strait of Hormuz. And I would want to say that just for some color and, just to think about it, perhaps the United States was able, its Navy ships go into the Strait of Hormuz for this operation because maybe Ghalibaf and Vance and the negotiating teams in Islamabad agreed to something like this. Because remember, this happened during those negotiations. Now, Axios reports that the Iranian side didn't know that this was going to happen. But, that's something to take into consideration, that this operation happened while those negotiations were happening. One has to wonder whether or not this was some sort of a preliminary agreement that the Iranian side, the negotiating team, had given a green light to.
All right, Susan, we leave it at that. We will keep coming back to you for more updates.